It says it's trying to connect, so we'll start already. Good morning. How are you? Now, we're starting a sugya, which we're not going to spend much time on, but it's a very, very important issue. Is that you can't have a mechitza, you can't have a barrier between you and the schach, or something between the schach. So this says like this. If you put a sheet over the schach, that you don't want the sun to affect you. That means that the sun is very strong. Or you put another sheet underneath the schach, you cover the entire schach with a sheet because of the pieces of schach that are falling in. Or you should pierce a gabi akinuf, or you spread it on a four-poster bed, psula. Our opposed to a gabi naklita mitzvah, you're allowed to put it on a two-poster bed. This is the Mishnah. So let's see. Here you've got somebody spread a sheet on top because of the sun. Here somebody underneath to catch all the falling bits. And there's a four-poster bed. And there's a two-poster bed. What's the difference between a four-poster bed and a two-poster bed? Like, there is this two-poster bed, it goes up to a point. So there's no mechitza on top. Four-poster bed is a mechitza on top. Only because if you want things to stop things falling in. To make it beautiful, so if you take a decoration, it's got a picture over here as well. So here, a person made a decoration of a sukkah, and the decoration was an entire sheet of pictures or something. He made a whole picture, and he spread it across the entire schach. It is kosher. And we pass them like this. Why? What's the difference? Because what is lineoiso when it's the beautiful sukkah, it's the bottle to the schach. So if you put a sheet underneath on a four-poster bed, that's no good, because at the end of the day, you're making a new barrier which you on the schach. But when you put a huge sheet there, the whole purpose is only to protect from the schach falling in. To beautify it, then beautifying it is part of enhancing the schach. So if you put a non-piece of kosher schach across the entire roof of the schach, but the purpose is to beautify the schach, it is kosher. Says Rob Shita, the Mishnah says clearly the reason why it's no good is nesha. Nesha means the things are falling in. So you might have thought that everything is forbidden, even for beautifying. The Mishnah just wants to talk about a normal case, because normally a person puts up such a sheet to protect from the sun or for something like that. That even in the Neoisa, the Kvash are not, that the Neoisa is mutter. Let's prove it. If you do the right schach, and then you add the decorations. So here's one of the main yesodim, one of the main sources to decorate the sukkah. And here the Mishnah says a list of things you can decorate the sukkah. You beautified it with kromin. Kromin is colored cloths. Is embroidered linens. You hang up nuts, almonds, afarsican, peaches, rimonium, pomegranates, bachili, anovim, bunches of grapes. Wreaths of grain, yenos, wine, shmon, and flour, slotters. Also, the stapit bread, you're not allowed to benefit from them. Top of Yehuda with Beis. As motzi yom tevach and shulchag until after Sukkot, until after Shmini Atzeres. Why is it also on Shmini Atzeres? So Shmini Atzeres is the mitzvah to sit on the sukkah. So if it's the mitzvah to sit on the sukkah, so it's not part of muktzah mitzvosei. Anybody know? Like, this is the taste over here. That bein hashmoshes, the moment between shkia and nacht, on the 7th day of Sukkot, could you have benefited from this flour? No, why not? Why can't you? Because every minute you're not sure if it's Sukkot or Shmini Atzeres. So the whole time period of bein hashmoshes between Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres, you are also to enjoy it. Anything which is also bein hashmoshes, the principle is also the whole day. So, for example, in Shmini Atzeres, so you're allowed to take down one of the decorations and eat it? No. That's, for example, Lead Sol. We don't keep sukkahs at all on Shmini Atzeres. So nobody sits in the sukkah. There's no mitzvah of sukkah. Unless you hung up an apple on sukkah to make the sukkah nice. Can you eat it? No, you're not allowed to eat it. If you make a condition, you're allowed to, if you make a condition that it's Shumik Kamas. It says clearly that you're allowed to put up decorations. And the fact that you're allowed to put up decorations is a proof that we're not choisha she'etzchach posel is a riot of chista that kolla ne'oisa. Anything which is to beautify the sukkah is show is mutter. And so, well, you've got no raya, dimum in that side. Maybe those decorations were on the side of the sukkah. You have no proof that you're allowed to put up decorations on the roof of the sukkah. So the Maisa, we pass on like a chista that kolla ne'oisa. Anything to beautify the sukkah is permitted, but we have no proof to him from this vice. Itma. No sukkah in the sukkah. Let me like this. If you've got a sukkah which is more than 20 times high, but you put a lot of decorations, and the decorations go lower than 20, then it does not make your sukkah kosher. It doesn't make it kosher. Why not? Because at the end of the day, Rashi says, either way it's going to be possible. If you count the schach, well, it's no good, it's schach posel, it is sheets, it's not kosher schach. And if you count it, you discount it, then your schach is more than 20 times high. So the fact that the decorations go lower than 20 times doesn't make it matter. Let's say you have this tiny sukkah. What's the minimum size sukkah that we pass on? 7 tvach by 7 tvach, approximately 70 centimeters. And then what happens is, this tiny sukkah, you go and decorate it all the way around the walls. And by the time you finish decorating the walls, you don't have 7 by 7, you only have 6 by 6, then it's possible. So by schach, we're machmir both ways. We're machmir that it doesn't lower the roof, and we are machmir that it makes the sukkah smaller. But one thing is very interesting, that if it's 10 tefachim high, we said it's kosher. What happens if you put decorations and it's less than 10 tefachim? What would you say they did? What would you say logically?
Kosher.
Why?
For some reason, there's a schach of 20 ounces.
But that's what I did. You're right. You're correct halachically. Let's get this halacha clear. But I thought otherwise. Mishra says that Mishra won't say like you. But if you go to the 10 tefachim high and you put decorations, how comfortable are you going to be in that sukkah? It should be like what Abaya said, that if you've got branches coming in, Abaya thought it's okay, and Mother came in and said to him, no, it's a dira svucha, nobody could ever live like that. Do you remember we had Abaya and Mother? So the Mishavur says the difference is that once it's for beautifying it, becomes bottled to the schach. So therefore it doesn't disturb you the same. But if the schach itself is coming in within 10 tvachim, it is possible. Okay.
You're on a sukkah at 10 tvachim high, probably stop on a cushion on the floor, no?
Yeah, you're allowed to put chairs, you're allowed to put tables inside. Okay, but there we see by Rashi. Okay, nice, you're right. That's a halacha. What's like this? Minomin avdidu Rashi. Minomin the servant of Rashi. It's Misha leketunta b'maya. His coat got wet. So he spread it over the sukkah to dry out. On Rashi, take it away. They shouldn't say they shouldn't say that we use schach clothes. People will see a coat hanging over the sukkah. What will they think? That the coat is the schach, which is no good. The coat can't be used as schach. Why can't they use this coat as schach? They can see that it's wet, so everybody knows they're not hanging there for the sake of schach. As well, the chiyuv should come in aloch only when it's dry. Did I mean that you should take it off? There's a huge machlokes shinim over here, and I'll sort of take up the time. But it's very, very important. The question is, what are we supposed to learn from this story? And we'll go backwards. We've learned that anything for beauty is okay, right? So if you've got a kosher sukkah and you come with the entire schach with a beautiful painting, I don't know what, then the halacha is you've got a kosher sukkah. Can you imagine? You're not sitting on any schach. The answer is because the beauty is bottled to the schach. We also learned that if you put a sheet to catch all the dripping leaves, what's the halacha? Possible. Now the question is over here, it's neither here nor there. Why? Here, when you put the coat over, was it for beautifying the sukkah? No. Was it in order to catch the leaves? No. So this is a completely different reason. This reason that you spread out the coat is actually for a completely different reason. Not to do with the schach and not to do with protection, it's to do for the coat.
I thought it was also going off. You get enough from it by drying your clothes on it.
You're getting enough from the sukkah by drying your clothes? Not really.
You said yesterday, if you take the soft.
We said the code to one Rishonim was machlokas to speaks one shit that the holiness is only if you take something off, like a splinter to clean the teeth, to lean on the sukkah. If it man's mind not allowed to lean on the sukkah, would you be allowed to spread it? I think you would be allowed to. It's not doing anything. It's just a place to put your coat while it's wet. I'm not sure. I hear your argument. I have to think about it. But the point is, over here, it's neither this nor that. It's not to beautify the sukkah. The coat does make the sukkah beautiful. And it's not to stop the sangha or thing, which is, so therefore, what is the din? So some Rishonim say, from this Gemara, it's clear that Rashi held it was mutter. Because Rashi never said to him, take it away because it's chach posel. What did Rashi say to him? I don't want people to think that I'm using this as my schach. It's as much, but if everybody would know that it's not my schach, it's just there to dry out. There's nothing wrong with it. The only reason it's exiled that people might think this is my original schach, and therefore you're allowed to spread. For example, let's say, you come home and your bed sheet gets wet. Let's say child has an accident, so you wash it and you need to dry it. So you'd be allowed to spread it over your sukkah, and it would not be a psul. That is how some of the Rishonim learn. Oh, it's not then the oyso to beautify it, and beautifying you said is okay, but everything else is not. The answer is no, because it's not to stop the sun getting in. It's in between. It's something else. The other Rishonim that say that Rashi, of course, can't be kosher. Why would it be kosher? At the end of the day, it's schach posel. How would it be kosher? Bishleim when it's oyso, it's bottled to the schach. But here, in what way is it bottled to the schach? And they say Rashi was talking about the sukkah that nobody was using. And the reason Rashi said take it away was because of the gzir that, of course, nobody was going to use it. The problem was that other people might look at it and say, that's his sukkah. But when you actually use the sukkah, of course you can't. So it's a machlekes rishonim, and it's brought up machlekes v'shlavon. And Shmuel says you have to be machmir. So you can't cover your schach with anything other than l'ne'oisa to make it pretty. But everything else, for example, Beis it's a machlekes, so you could argue. But I would say that halacha l'maisa, one shouldn't use the schach, for example, as a place to dry out his things. Okay. Itva. No sukkah b'flogim in arba. If you've got a beautiful sukkah which is more than 4 tefachim away from the schach, we pass it as possible. So if you got the decoration which is more than 4 tefachim away from the schach, about 35 centimeters away from the schach, it is no good. Says the Mechaber, it's only no good if the decoration itself is 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide. So let's say, for example, you get this very, very beautiful, glittery, opens up decoration, and it goes down 4 tefachim and spreads 4 tefachim, you've gone and put yourself something possible in the sukkah. Like a chandelier type. So that's a big problem. And I was once sitting in somebody's sukkah, and he didn't have a single decoration on the schach. And he said the reason is because he doesn't want that they should start with shiny chains. Once you get to shiny chains, or get to shiny chandeliers. Once you get to shiny chandeliers, you'll have these big things which are no good. But the Maisa, the Ikar halacha is, either if it's less than 4 tefachim from the schach, or if it's more than 4 tefachim, but it's less than 4 tefachim wide, it's okay. But if it's more than 4 tefachim wide, and it's more than 4 tefachim away from the schach, it's actually no good. It's no good.
You mean just under that area?
Just under that area, Now it says a little story of Chista Baba Huna Ikul Beis Gelusa. Of Chista Baba Huna went to Beis Gelusa. And they held that it's no good, by the way. They passed it, it's no good. If you remember, Chista Baba Huna said possible. Ignudu am Nachman Besukkah Shenoya Muflogim in Arbot Fachim. The Nachman who held that it's okay went and took them into the sukkah and he put them underneath the area which, according to them, it's possible. According to him, it's kosher. Why did he do that? Because he wanted to force them to accept his shitta. And they accepted it. They sat there. Oh, you changed your mind. You hold like me. Where do we pass from the sukkah? Why? We're visiting our Rebbe. When you visit your Rebbe, you're part from the sukkah. And we shouldn't say it doesn't mean that you can just stand pot. It means that it'd be difficult for you to visit the Rebbe and do the sukkah at the same time. So therefore, they were okay. The Ritvovi asks a very, very big question. The halacha is there's a terrible issur if the Ibn is a michshol, and that he's not allowed to help somebody to do an aveil. Right? Remember once you were to give a whole dvash, I went to hear it. If somebody asks you to pass me to buy a box of cigarettes, or to pass a box of cigarettes, I don't know if anybody here smokes, but the Maisa is a shaila of is there a problem of if there's what's the problem? Why here is not a problem?
Because he holds that it's mutter.
Very good. Says the Ritvo that he holds its mutter. The Ritvo is not thrilled with it because he holds like this. At the end of the day, they held its also. And since it's a machloikas, he was not greater than them to paskin like them. So since it's a machloikas, how could Rav Nachman paskin? He said like this: how could you do something which, according to their shit, is also when you the halach is not be muchar like them? So therefore, the Rav Nachman, so he says like this: that since he held its mutter, it wasn't to even if the even shitose. And then the Ritva says after a different reason that maybe Taki would be awesome. But over here, he knew that they could see the problem. And he knew that if they held that it was awesome, they wouldn't go to sleep or eat. So therefore, he wasn't actually making them do an Avera at all. All he was doing was taking them such a sukkah, waiting for them to see what will they do. Since it was clear, since if it wouldn't have been clear, let's say they would not have noticed the psul, then Taki would have been asa, even if Rav Nachman holds its mutter, since Lemais L'Shetos it's asa. It's interesting with Gabi if
and you can pass a packet of cigarettes?
Oh, the answer would be it depends if they can get the cigarettes easily themselves. Here, they could have moved to a different section of the sukkah, for example. Now, then when you pass the box of cigarettes, we're in a case where, let's say, for example, he can't get it so much.
What did they do? Did they sleep in
Yeah.
that area?
That's it. They stepped into that area because they held not because the sukkah was kosher. They held the sukkah was possible.
They're doing a mitzvah.
They were doing a mitzvah visiting the Rebbe. What?
When we're sleeping in the apostle sukkah.
It is, but not when you visit. We'll see later that anybody who's isik the mitzvah is part of the sukkah.
What's wrong with sleeping in the apostle? Some people sleep in the house in sukkahs.
The ikar halacha is you have to sleep in the sukkah. It's only nowadays that we live in cold countries. But in the old days, everybody slept in the sukkah. That was the normal thing to sleep in the sukkah.
Some Hasidim didn't sleep there.
The Hasidim much later. What happened was the Hasidim all lived in very cold countries, and therefore they struggled with it, and therefore they did. The Vilna Gaon felt very, very, very strongly. One year he wasn't well, and he still slept in the sukkah because he wanted people to be aware of the mitzvah of sleeping in the sukkah. It's a very special mitzvah. It's okay. We'll talk about it later. Oh, now we're going to come on to a slightly new topic. There was like this. This is more complicated. It's not complicated like this. We've talked about a 4-poster bed, mutter also. Very good. A 2-poster bed. What's this? Let's just talk about a very, very clear picture. So there's a 2-poster bed. We had on this other page a 4-poster bed. As a 4-poster bed is no good, right? So a 4-poster bed is no good. Why is it no good if you sleep in a 4-poster bed? Because you've got a wall on top of you. So it's as if you're living in a house with the schachs on top of you. That's no good. So if you see a 4-poster bed with a blanket or with a sheet on top of it. Now we'll talk about something very similar, but it's not considered a 4-poster bed. It is a kilo. A kilo is a canopy which is very flimsy. So it's not like a 4-poster bed. It doesn't have that same permanence, but it's still a mechitza. That means even if it's got a roof, as long as it's not 10 tefachim high, it is mutter. The Mishnah talk about only when it's 10 tefachim high. Beis if you sleep underneath the bed, you're not yotza. So if you sleep underneath a bed which is less than 10 tefachim, you're okay. Somebody told me that he doesn't have enough space for his children to sleep in the sukkah. So what he does is he puts one child underneath the bed, one child on top of the bed. He gets a bed which is very, very low, and let's say 5 tefachim high. The children are desperate to sleep in the sukkah, so one of them sleeps underneath the bed, and one sleeps on top of the bed, and it's okay because as long as it's not 10 tefachim high, you're okay. If you spread it on posts, it's possible. So now we give you a soul to always 10 tefachim high. You have a Beis not like that. They tell you naklitin shnayim. Naklitin was when there's only 2 posts. Like we pictured it, 2 posts at each end, and you drape it over. The knofus arba, but the knofus is 4 posts. Pils gabi knofus psula. Again, naklitin kshel. Uvachile kvitin kalitin gvel nachamita asa. As long as the naklitin are not 10 tefachim high, bechad the knofus. These knofus are asa. After b'shein geboy asa, we see that knofus are forbidden even if it's not 10 tefachim high. And since the Gemara, you can't prove from there. Shani knofus the kvi, they're very, very fixed. And since they're very fixed, even if they're less than 10 tefachim, it's asa. Succca the kvi or succca is asa, and that's fixed. It's only asa if it's 10 tefachim. So how can you say that by knofus it's only asa? Because it's fixed, but then it's asa even less than 10 tefachim. But sukkah is also fixed, and therefore it's only asa when it's 10 tefachim. Here you want to make it a new tent. So therefore, to make it a tent, then it's possible to be even less than 10 tefachim as long as it's permanent. If it is, but to make a whole sukkah, that requires that there should be 10. The Maisa, I've gone a bit fast, but the main Nekuda is like this. A 2-poster or 4-poster which is flimsy is permitted even if it's 10. So no, not up to 10. Sorry, up to 10. It's mutter up to 10. Something which is flimsy or a 2-poster is up to 10. That's a kilo or naklitin. But kinofos, which are permanent building, they are forbidden even if it's less, even more permanent, even if they're less than 10, since it's a proper blanket on top, it's also if it's less than 10. Somebody who sleeps completely undressed, is allowed to say kriyashma. The halacha is like this. You're not allowed to say kriyashma when the person's undressed. Right? Most not allowed to say kriyashma when he's undressed. Now what happens if he's in one room and he sticks his head in another room and he's undressed. Mutter also. The halacha is there is also. Why? Fascinating halacha. Why? Because when you put your head through the window, we always go after roiv your body. Roiv your body is in this room, so your head is as if it's in this room, and in this room you're undressed. No, if you put a blanket around you or a coat over you, then you're okay. Why? Because a coat wraps you up. Since it wraps you up, so therefore your head is not seeing your elbow. But shaking when you're undressed and you're just putting your head out of another room, so then the head is not your body's not covered. You can't say that the room is covering you. It's a massive room. The room's not covering you. Only the way you want to make it mutter is because your head is in a different rishus. But that doesn't help you. Why does that not help you? Because the head goes after move the body. So going back to this sugya we just had regarding sukkahs, you've got the same shaila regarding a canopy. If the canopy is more than 10, where therefore it's a proper room. So if you stick your head out of it, so therefore it's just like your head in one room, your body in the other, your head goes after your body, and therefore you're not allowed to say Kriyat Shema. But if it's less than 10 tvachim, it's like you're covering yourself in a blanket, and if your head is sticking out of a blanket, of course you're allowed to say Kriyat Shema. So therefore, that is the shaila over here. What kind of canopy are we talking about? You're allowed to stick your head out. Beis, you're not allowed to. If it's 10 tvachim high, it's considered a room, and therefore you stick your head out. It's like standing undressed, putting your head out the window is no good. Here we're talking about a case where your body, it is what's the word for it? It is where it's less than 10 tvachim. That if you're standing undressed, you can't stick your head out of the window and say Shema. Shema me no, it is okay. There's a very, very, very short twist. I don't know who's running out of time. This bottom twist is very, very important twist. There is many Rishonim that hold that even if you're completely covered in a blanket, it's no good unless there's something between your heart and the elbow. So let's say a person completely undressed, he's covered in a blanket. What he should do is place his hand over the blanket, press it a tiny bit, very, very gently, between his heart and his elbow, like this. And then he's okay. Let's, for example, I'm only wearing one layer of clothes, like a cloak. You press the cloak against the between the heart and the elbow, and that makes a break between the heart and the elbow, and therefore it's okay. Okay. It says, well, by Islam, you have to shake where I saw. That's right. The arm can't because you can't touch yourself. You have to wash your hands for Shema. Your arm could, in theory.
You can't use your arm for a couple.
Yeah, but here you could. For this, you could. In theory, you could use your arm, except for the fact that then you'd have to wash your hands again because of Kriyat, because we want to say Kriyat Shema. It says, well, by Islam, I saw a house, which is a proper house. So if you've got a house which is less than 10 tvachim high, and you stick your head out the window, and you're completely undressed, can you say Shema? No. Oh, it's less than 10 tvachim high. But then, because it's a proper house, nobody looks at it as a garment. It's only by a garment, only by a tent, if it's less than 10 tvachim high, look at it as a garment. There's a version of it has no roof. So here we're talking about where it's got no roof, but it's 10 tvachim high. Not allowed to. It has a roof. Toshva naklitin shnayim knifes harbor, Piska miknifes psuna. Agav naklitin kishiro. Uvachim naklitin gvum namita asot. Tvach mazor as long as not 10 tvachim high. Or gvum namita asot psula. After shein no gag, even if it's got no roof. As more shani naklitin dekvi. They're established. Then where you kvi, they have a knifes. Is where knifes is we also, even if it's not 10 tvachim high. They got a knifes dekvi. They got a kilo kvi. So therefore, if it's considered a completely fixed room, so therefore, even if it's less than 10 tvachim, it is awesome. If it's not fixed, it's only awesome more than 10 tvachim. Naklitin are only awesome when they're 10 tvachim high, because naklitin don't have a proper roof. Kinofas are properly fixed, and they're also even less than 10 tvachim. He holds that it's mutter doing passing like this, that you're allowed to sleep in a four-poster bed. Again, a four-poster bed that has no roof, of course, is mutter. But about a four-poster bed that has a blanket on top, you're allowed to sleep in the command. Rabbi Yehuda holds that when you sleep in the sukkah, even if you sleep underneath the bed, and even if the bed is more than 10 tvachim high, you're mutter. Why is it mutter? Because a bed is not a permanent structure. It moves around here and there. Since it's not a permanent structure, it's considered a weak and unimportant structure in comparison to the sukkah. And therefore, sleeping underneath it does not say that I moved away. If you build yourself a house, and on top of that you build a sukkah, build with a degree, it's no good. Because the house is a permanent structure. But to say, when somebody would ask if you're sleeping underneath the bed, are you sleeping in the sukkah? Most people would say, yes, you are. They don't look at it as a bed, as a whole new structure which is taking you out of the sukkah. They look at it as a flimsy thing. So Abdul holds it's okay. Hey, the more.
So if the covering is within 4 socket of the Succca, would that make it?
That would also be okay. Because it is not part of the schach, it is bottle, it is part of the bed. And since it's part of the bed, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the bed itself is a flimsy structure.
According to the opinion of the four-post where you can't sleep on.
Then it won't help anyway, because then you anyway won't be allowed to, because the four-post bed, you're not allowed to sleep in the four-post bed because it's got a covering.
But if the covering is beautiful and it goes near within the top,
no, it still won't be good. It still won't be good, because at the end of the day, it's not to beautify the schach, it's just to make your bed nice. I don't think that would work. But okay, again, if he is coming to tell us that you're allowed to sleep before goes to bed, because it's the same as sleeping underneath the bed, and he wants to ask like if you're allowed to sleep underneath the bed, just say that Allah is like Yehuda. It means like this. There's a big difference between sleeping underneath the bed, which is 10 tefachim high, and sleeping on the four-post bed, which is 4 tefachim high. Sleeping underneath the bed, you might say that's fine. Why is that fine? Because you're not supposed to sleep underneath the bed. The bed, when you look at the structure of a bed, you don't look at the underneath part of the bed as being a tent. Why? Because every day when they look at the bed, they look at the top being where you're supposed to sleep. The underneath is like irrelevant, just because to raise you not to be lying so low. If you sleep in a four-poster bed, it looks like you're in another structure, because the bed is made to have this canopy, and it's made to sleep on the bed and within the canopy. So Rav is coming to tell us a bigger chiddush than Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda only said that if you sleep underneath the bed, it's okay. Which is not such a big chiddush. Why not? Because this is sleeping underneath the bed. You might have said, well, that's not really another room, because nobody looks underneath the bed as being the main part to be. But sleeping on top of a bed, you might have thought it's also. Even that's okay. And it makes no difference. So therefore, according to Rav, which we don't pass him, you're allowed to sleep even in a four-poster bed, which has got a proper covering, even that is mutter. Now, the question is, because of the no shiur on the Tisha B'Av, we need to move on a little bit. Because if everybody needs to go, I'll tell you another time. If those you need to go, anybody can stay. Could you stay a few more minutes? Okay, we'll stay a few more minutes, just do a little bit more. If anybody needs to go, shouldn't feel uncomfortable at all. Don't feel. I have a very good chance. Okay. If a person spreads a vine, we said it's like a kind of gourd, there's a kisses, a kind of ivy. The Succca got up so. If there was more schach, or you should cut them, or you cut them from the ground, anything which is mekabel tumah, and or it doesn't grow from the ground, it's either or. The Mishnah here tells us 2 rules. That in order for schach to be kosher, it has to grow from the ground, it's A, and B, it must be not mekabel tumah. So for example, if you've got a piece of plastic, it didn't grow from the ground, or let's say a piece of a coat, it didn't grow from the ground, you can't use schach because it didn't grow from the ground. If you've got a wooden spoon, say grew from the ground, can you use it for schach? It's mekabel tumah, very good. Why is it mekabel tumah? Because it can be used as a keli. So anything which is not mekabel tumah, and it grew from the ground, that's interesting. The Rishonim all very disturbed. It's the first part of the Mishnah is talking about an ivy. An ivy is a mekabel tumah? No. Did it grow from the ground? Yes. So why is it no good? It's still attached. So the Mishnah starts off with one psul, the psul being attached, which we learned from a pasuk Rashi told us earlier. The psul there has to be not attached. And then the Mishnah finishes off klal and tells us 2 other rules, which are not the first rule. In fact, if you want to be really accurate, there are 3 rules regarding schach. It has to grow from the ground. That's not metal. It has to be not mekabel tumah, that means not a keli, and it has to be detached. So it's very interesting. So they say that sometimes the Mishnah finishes off with what's the general rule of schach, because the halacha of detached is not so common. How often do you use a attached? The main halacha of schach is these 2 rules. When you're going to buy schach, these are the 2 main halachas you have to look at. Remember, somebody came to me that they had in B&Q, they had these what's called wooden fencing, and the question is, can you buy a wooden fencing and just use it as schach on top? And the truth of the matter is, we looked into it a little bit, I asked the Shara. The wooden fencing, what they do is it's wooden slats with tiny metal threads twined around the wooden slats in order to put it on the schach. So anyway, it would be no good because it's mamid b'tomah. That's no good. You should be aware. But anyway, when you last said that's mekabel tumah because it's a keli. It's made to protect your garden. It's not because it's Succca creates when you haven't designated. Sorry, you haven't designated as something. We'll see later that, for example, let's example, first takes a wooden mat and you use it as his bed. You can't use it as schach, even though it's Succca creates. Okay. It says, "Go Yosef Yisroel avodah Yosef kama oishe kotzen kashera." That is either one is kosher. V'omar Rav tzorich l'naneach. The Rav says like this: that if you did the schach, that means you took a vine or ivy, you covered your sukkah, and then you snipped it at the bottom. Then what do you have to do? You have to shake the schach. Why do you have to shake the schach? Meaning that when you made the sukkah, you put the schach on, it was the kosher sukkah. And then later you had to make it kosher by just cutting it. It's no good as ta'asav le'min also. So Rabbi Yosef said to Rabbi Huna that I heard from Rav that you have to shake it. Only Rabbi Huna, that's only if it's a minimal amount of schach, less than the schach kosher. Here we're talking about where the most of it is schach posel. Only Rabbi Huna, Shmuel said this. I did Rabbi Yosef Rabbi. Rabbi Yosef got very annoyed. Very briefly, Rabbi Yosef said Rav said you need to shake it. Rabbi Huna said Shmuel says you need to shake it. Why did he get annoyed? He said, did I say to you Shmuel never said it? I just told you a statement in the name of Rav. You're coming along and saying to me Shmuel said it. What are you adding? Rav said it, Shmuel said it. You're not telling me anything different. I said to you Rav said it. You're saying to me Shmuel said it. You're not arguing with me. That's not to the point. You just say, if I tell you a joke and you say to me, I heard the same joke for somebody else. You're not really enhancing the conversation. Says, oh, no. No, you're wrong. I didn't mean that. I'm arguing with you. The Rav actually holds its kosher. That means Rav holds that if you spread your sukkah with ivy, completely with ivy, and then instead of putting, then all you do is go and snip the roots, cut off the roots, you're kosher. He doesn't hold of ta'asav le'min also. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. He holds that the cutting it is good enough that it's not ta'asav le'min also. So the Shainim ask, if that's not the case of ta'asav le'min also, when would there ever be ta'asav le'min also? Again, Rav holds it's not a problem of ta'asav le'min also. Why not? Because when you cut the ivy from the floor, so then that act of cutting the ivy, that makes the sukkah kosher. So if that's the case, when would you ever have a case of ta'asav le'min also? Ta'asav le'min also means that if you make the schach first, and when the sukkah is possible, like some people, it's happened every year you get the shine. What happens is they have the sukkah roof closed, they put the schach up, and then they realize that it's no good. You have to open the roof, shake it, lift it up, and then do it again. So the question is, when did Rav hold ta'asav le'min also? Does anybody know the answer?
All these hay stuff things like
very good. I never thought of that answer. So what happens is you've got a huge haystack, hay is kosher schach, and you dig into the haystack a hole. So you've never done anything about the schach at all. And then you sit inside that hole. So then you've got the schach, and you never even bothered doing one act, nothing for the schach. That's ta'asav le'min also. But over here you could argue, I made it as a schach, I cut it from the ground. Now, we don't pass like Rav. We just wanted to give explanation. There's two levels of ta'asav le'min also. Dig in the haystack, everything is still good, and cutting out the roots where you've done something where that's machrik. So what's the proof that Rav holds it's okay? Rav Achshur Machshir, called Rav Amon Chasida. Rav Amon the Chassid V'Amon Techel to the Pazum B'dan Shebeisa. He put tzitzis on his wife's clothes because he held that woman on mechuyev in tzitzis. Why did he hold that woman on mechuyev in tzitzis? Anybody know? Why a woman parted from tzitzis? It's a Leishman Goma. Why this is Leishman Goma? Do it at night. Do it at night. So since you only do it to half the day, it's Mr. Leishman Goma. But Amam held there's a mitzvah where it's at night. Since it's mitzvah where it's at night, so it's not Mr. Leishman Goma. Since it's not Mr. Leishman Goma, woman mechuyev put tzitzis. So he put tzitzis on his wife's clothes. He did a very complicated system. We should draw a very picture. If you look at the picture, you have to look at it in detail. He took one very, very, very long string, and he made it go in and out 4 times. Then he made the entire system, he made the whole tzitzis, and then at the end, he slipped it to split it into 4 strings. Instead of taking 4 strings, he took one string, folded it over 4 times, put it in, made all the knots and everything else, and then he slipped it. Sorry, he hadn't yet even cut it. Sorry, he hadn't cut it. Just cut it in this kosher. Just like by tzitzis, there's also a psul of tasser and also, for example, let's say you have a beged which is no good. There's something wrong with the beged. It's not chayav tzitzis. It's not big enough, let's say. And you put on the strings, and then you make the beged bigger, that it should be chayav tzitzis. It's no good. It's tasser and also. So over here as well, when you put the strings in, it was no good, and then you cut it. The answer is he holds that the cutting it is in the tasser. So just like the cutting the tzitzis is okay, also cutting the ivy is okay, and it's not a problem to ask from the also. Says Bob, so Shmuel Rabbi discussed the Shmuel not hold of this, but told Shmuel here hit the shtei this for Sachas. Here he did even more complicated tzitzis. What he did was he took the two corners of the tzitzis and he put them in at the same time. It's actually not so big, so the article's got a better picture. What happened was he took both corners of the tzitzis and he put the strings into both of them, one long string, put them into both corners, and then you tied the strings together. Right, showing it here. This picture is even better. If you look over here, this one, this is the picture. Can you see what he did? What he did was he actually folded the tzitzis together, and now he hasn't actually put it into two corners. And then what happens is, it's kosher. My life already made the knots. Look, that he first snipped it and then afterwards he made the knots. And therefore, since he made the knots after he snipped the string, and the Ikka Mitzvah is making the knots, therefore it's not a problem to ask from the Asui. Because if the Ikka Mitzvah is the knots, not putting the strings inside. What's the Chiddush? The table being on top of Yudalef and Beis, being on Kodah for Shas Psul. It has to according to the time you put it in, but that's okay. It's possible. It says clearly that if you put the strings in and only late and then before you cut it into four, it's possible. My lab psulin lo'ilam, but you have to develop. My psulin actually it's possible until you cut it. The shvolam psulin lo'ilam, the apostle forever and ever. The chidam Levi psulin lo'ilam, the chidam Rastam Ashmo psulin lo'ilam, then the apostle forever. So the machlokas amoyroim. If you put one very, very long string, fold it into four, put it inside the corner, and then afterwards you make all the knots. Rashi is at pains to point out that if you cut it first and then you do the knots, everybody agrees it's okay. Because the knots is the main mitzvah. When I do tzitzis, I always say the shibitz tzitzis. Now, when do I start saying shibitz tzitzis? So I'm machmir to say it from the moment as I'm trying to put it in. But really, it's not necessary. You only need to say the shibitz tzitzis from the time that you start making the knots. What?
The first knot.
From the first knot. That's the answer. The apostle forever because he didn't do task for us. It says clearly that it's possible. And it's possible. If we talk about it, ivy, which you never cut it, the Beis says that if you make a Succca with ivy, it's possible. Why? What are we talking about? If we talk about the ivy which you never cut and it's still growing, then what's the problem?
Sorry.
It's nothing to do with Nasui. The reason why it's no good is because it's still growing. How can the Beis say it's no good because Tassim Nasui? The reason it's no good is because it's still growing. Obviously, we're talking about when you cut it, and that's why there's nothing wrong with growing. The only problem is because of Tassim Nasui. It's a kasha vav. Here we're talking about the shalfidu shlufi. We're talking about a case where you didn't cut it, you twisted it. And what's the difference between cutting and twisting? When you cut it, everybody can see that the ivy is separated from the ground. You cut it off completely. When you just put it and twist it a little bit where it's not properly growing, so what happens is it's not mechubal because it's not growing from the ground. But nobody can tell that it's cut away from the ground. And therefore then it's no good even according to
Why
Vav.
is that a problem?
Because then it looks like it's still growing, so therefore it's not. The Succca is possible.
It's not Tassim also.
It's not Tassim also. It's not considered. It's not considered Asir Ma'alim. Rashi says it's not considered. You remind me that what's Rav holds? Rav holds the cutting makes not Tassim also because the cutting itself is an important act. When you only twist it, it's not an important act. It's not a proper asir. Since it's not a proper asir, you're back to the problem of tassim and asir. We can walk him to the posach kasha. Kasha levav says, well, kasha, it is a kasha against Rav. Okay. We'll stop over here where we're discussing, so it's because the next thing goes on to quite a bit. So we'll take a half an hour. If anybody can put it onto the group, can you put onto the group Lema Messiah? Will you put it up to Lema Ketanoi? So Lema Ketanoi, it's about 50 lines from the top, 3 lines from the top, and we'll start then with Hashem on Monday. Monday's daf is quite short, so therefore
So you're not doing another one today?
Not doing another one today. I'm not doing another one today. There's also more people coming. Shabbos.